It's Monday, July 11th, and I call this meeting of the Clear Creek Independent School District to order at 4:30 p.m. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been duly called and that its notice has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. And we will move to community input. Seeing that there's no community input, we will move to item 4. Dr. Williams.
Yes, we are pleased to present to you this evening an update regarding the work of the Safe Schools Advisory Committee. And certainly Clear Creek ISD has no more important responsibility than promoting the safety of students, staff, and really all members of the community, all those individuals that come on our campuses or to our offices. And so with this in mind, and also in the wake of the shooting in Uvalde, we convened a School Safety Advisory Committee, as you know, this summer to review current safety measures and to make recommendations to staff on how to build on our efforts to promote safety. And the committee met 4 times. The first meeting was virtual on June 7th, and then in person on June 21st, June 28th, and July 5th. We intentionally structured the committee as a sprint group, in other words, a group whose work is of short duration, but action-oriented in terms of articulating specific recommendations. And so I'll note also that this group is different than the legislatively required Safe and Secure Schools Committee. The group included members who are listed in the slide deck there, specifically 20 parents, 10 campus staff members, 5 law enforcement representatives, 3 faith-based leaders, 2 school board members, 2 emergency management officials, and a student. And the committee charges and guidelines are set forth here. First of all, just recommending any appropriate changes or timelines, reviewing current practices and policies, and also having discussions regarding fidelity of those practices, identifying funding sources, or at least a review of possibilities to support recommendations, and looking at causal factors for students in crisis and what the implications are of that for our practices. I want to emphasize our appreciation for the work of the committee. It came together on short notice, again, 4 meetings in a short amount of time, including homework outside of the meetings. And they provided very valuable input regarding 3 major aspects of school safety: school security staffing, identifying and responding to threats, and technology and security systems. And so this afternoon, we'll provide an overview of the recommendations you're receiving. The report of the committee will provide an overview of their work, but we'll also describe staff's planned actions, and also we'll talk with you about how we will be seeking board approval of some proposed expenditures. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over initially to Dr. Bayer, Deputy Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, and he'll be joined in this presentation by Paul Miller, Assistant Superintendent Support Services.
Good afternoon. We reached out to our community to gather their thoughts using a platform called Thought Exchange. We had over almost 1,300 participants that provided over 1,040 thoughts with 38,000 ratings. Through the thoughts and through the information shared, the input and feedback, we were able to identify 3 primary themes from all the tremendous input from the community. Those themes include, as Dr. Williams mentioned, school security staffing, identifying and responding to threats, and technology and security systems. Information covering these 3 main ideas were presented to the committee, along with preliminary recommendations prepared from this thought exchange that we received. The committee was broken up into groups, and within their small groups, they provided information to each preliminary recommendation and identified areas in which they agreed. What did they argue against, or what did they disagree with? What did they aspire for the district related to these themes? And then what other lingering questions remained following the conversations and interactions that we had with the committee and within their small groups? So at this time, our Assistant Superintendent for Support Services, Mr. Paul Miller, will share the recommendations within the 3 main ideas that were developed based upon the small group work during that committee time.
Thank you, Dr. Bayard. The first category is school security staffing recommendations. That is broken into 4 distinct categories. The first is school security staffing. The committee recommends an officer at every elementary school while maintaining the officer at secondary schools. The next section is safety training. The committee recommended to improve and increase the frequency of mandatory school safety training for staff and students, to make that training available to parents, and to consider including CPR and first aid training. The next subcategory is accountability measures for staff. The committee recommended to clearly and consistently communicate safety and security policies and procedures, to incorporate those policies and procedures into job descriptions, and to take disciplinary action if those policies and procedures are not followed. The last subgroup under this section is expanding community outreach programs. The committee recommended that we expand the Watchdogs program and to provide clear and consistent training to the volunteers, and to develop an evaluation system for its effectiveness related to school safety. The committee also recommended that we consider development of CCISD volunteer community safety monitoring program as well. The next category is identifying and responding to threats, which is broken into 3 subcategories. The first one being signs of concerning behaviors training. The committee recommended that we develop a subset of the safe and supportive schools team training for all employees. Stress the importance of reporting to the correct person, to make the trainings required, consistent, and frequent, and to provide those trainings throughout the year, just not at the beginning of the year and at onboarding. The next subcategory is mental health, education, and communication. The committee recommended that we create a communication plan to educate students and families, to include information in that communication regarding the anonymous alert system and how it's used, to improve the communication link between parents and counselors, to increase opportunities for mental health education to families, students, and staff, and to destigmatize asking for help. The next subcategory is school counseling staffing. The committee recommended that we hire additional school counselors to meet student needs. The last category is technology and security systems, which is broken into 2 subcategories. The first of which is monitoring and securing doors. The committee recommended that we conduct a uniform study of each school to identify vulnerabilities, to involve local agencies, including police, fire, and EMS in that study, to develop plans to mitigate any vulnerabilities identified, and complete a full implementation of the door ajar alarm system that was installed as part of the 2018 recommendations, and to customize that system for large events so that we can minimize false alarms. The next subcategory under this section is security plans. The committee recommended that we add room and exit numbers to all campuses. So room numbers would be added to the exterior windows and exit numbers be added to each exit so that it could be easily identified by law enforcement and first responders. They recommended that we share detailed floor plans to first responders and to make sure that in an event they could readily access the school. They did stress strongly to avoid making schools feel like prisons, and they also wanted to establish student panels to provide feedback on school climate and safety issues. Excuse me. As you can see, the committee's recommendations are substantive, and we are thankful for their work. Our plan is to implement all non-staffing related recommendations. We are already in the process of implementing their recommendations. For example, door alarms and notifications will be in place this fall. We are developing education opportunities for parents, staff, and students on the signs of concerning behavior, emergency protocols, and mental health. We have a plan to have regular and frequent checks of the school perimeter to make sure that the gates and the doors are locked at all schools. We would like to move forward on a school security staffing plan which will improve daily presence of officers at the 27 elementary schools. We will conduct a work study on wraparound services as they relate to students' mental health, and we will communicate the plans to our families. Now, I would like to spend some time to talk about the school security staffing plan. We've met with Captain Rivas and gone over the status of security staffing. Based on a thorough review of current staffing levels and the committee's recommendations, we will bring forward a proposal to the school board in 2 weeks for an additional 5 school liaison officers. As you recall, we increased officers by 15 back in 2018. 10 of those 15 were stationed at intermediate schools, and those officers were assigned elementary schools to support. Right now, several of those officers are assigned to the 3 to 4 elementary schools, and this proposal will allow 1 officer to support no more than 2 elementary schools, thus significantly improving daily presence of officers at elementary schools. It does not guarantee that there will be an officer at every elementary school all day, but it will significantly increase the daily presence of the officers on campus. We will maintain our current staffing structure at high school and intermediate schools as part of this plan. Please know that there are times when officers are out sick, on vacation, or in training, so there may be times when 2 elementary schools per officer may not be possible, but we'll make allowances for that as the need arises. The cost of hiring 5 additional school liaisons officers is $425,000 annually, and the cost for vehicles and equipment is $200,000 with a replacement life cycle of 5 to 7 years. We anticipate there will be funding from the state for school security in this next legislative session. As funding becomes available, as we fully expect it to become available, we will reevaluate our school security staffing levels at that time. Next steps would be we will bring a formal recommendation to the July school board meeting to amend the contract with the Galveston County Sheriff's Department to add the 5 officers, and we'll also utilize capital and contingency funds of $200,000 to purchase police vehicles and equipment for those officers. We will also include school safety funding as a legislative priority. Back on June 30th, Brian Palazzi received a letter from TEA detailing out required steps that are to be done prior to the start of school, some of which we had already been working through, and Brian has been working with the facilities department and the maintenance and operations department to implement some of these. They are TEA required summer safety action steps. You'll see them on the screen above. They include a summer targeted partial safety audit, which is in process, an exterior door safety audit, which is also in process. It requires the Safety and Security Committee be reconvened, which we currently have scheduled for August 10th. That is the legislatively required committee that Dr. Williams mentioned. It requires completion of campus staff and substitute training, which is in process and will be done at the administrative mini camp later this month. It requires mandatory drill scheduling for the entire school year. We are utilizing a Raptor app to do that this year for the first time, and we're really excited how that's going to really impact our ability to get those scheduled and tracked. The safe and supportive school team training is required. That is in process, but there are some limitations to availability of courses from the Texas School Safety Center, so we're working with them to remedy that. We're also required to update our access control procedures to allow for weekly sweeps once school starts, and that has been updated. And so those are the 7 TEA summer action steps that we're currently working on.
We're thankful for Mr. Palazzi working with all the teams to fulfill the TEA summer safety action steps as required. I want to thank the committee for their engagement and focus throughout the process. They showed up each time full of energy, with core values, ready to share their opinions and recognizing that they represented our 42,000 students and our parents throughout our entire CCISD community. This is a great reminder of our mission and clarity of purpose. And I refer back to a key part of our mission statement, and that is we are to ensure that each student achieves, contributes, and leads with integrity in a safe and nurturing environment. And I think the recommendations that the committee has brought forward and that we're presenting to you help to achieve that mission and further it. It was also an opportunity for us to reset after COVID disruptions, 2 years of disruptions of managing the pandemic, and getting back to our roots of physical school safety, improved connections to families, students, and staff. So this time I'd like to turn it over to the board and for any questions or comments.
Thank you for that presentation. I'll open it up for comment. Mr. Bowen?
Scott Bowen, and I guess my question is related to the question I asked at the last meeting, which was when we're looking at prop doors. I mean, a door is propped open for a reason. It's because there's someone who needs to get in and out of that door who is not able to, because either they don't have access or they weren't given access. And so I saw that item number 7 of the TEA guidelines was access control procedures. Is part of that going to be making sure that substitutes and other individuals who are supposed to have access to the school are able to get some sort of temporary badge that lets them do that and not have to rely on students and other staff members to let them in and out?
Yes, we are already working on that. Brian's been working with our staff to make sure that we can provide that and provide it to the substitutes as they arrive on campus.
Thank you.
Long-term subs, right.
Well, I guess can I follow up on that? I mean, having it for long-term subs probably isn't enough, because even a substitute who is there for only one day at a particular campus still needs to be able to do their job for that day, and that includes coming in and out of doors. And so, I mean, the solution to that in every other secure location I've ever known of is that there's some sort of temporary badge that is given to that person at the beginning of the day, and then they turn it back in at the end of the day, and that gives them the access they need so they don't have to rely on other people to let them in and out. So is that something y'all plan on doing?
Yes. As part of the process, we're going to evaluate any instances that currently require a propping of a door or some other part of that process that we need to come up with good solutions to that, and utilizing card readers is a great solution because it's already there.
Thank you.
We obviously have to go through and look at the risk associated with that and make sure that we have policies and procedures covering that.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Kind of following up on the doors, the safety audit that's for the exterior doors, will that be completed prior to school starting?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'll just say, and just to kind of piggyback off of Dr. Bayard, being a part of the committee was eye-opening, especially talking with some of the students that were a part of it. We got some great feedback. Mr. Bowen, your issue on prop doors, it was actually interesting to hear it from a student, that has dual credit and, leaves campus, comes back to campus, things of that nature, and to kind of get his input on how he thought that might be handled. So I'll mention that. I'll mention the community input. A lot of our committees, when we put these out, we're looking for things that we might have overlooked or we might not have necessarily addressed back in, 2018. I will remind folks that, as part of 2017's bond, we were already looking at safety concerns, cameras and things of that nature. Those were some of the things on those. And after Santa Fe, adding of personnel, that was another issue I think that we addressed. I think what's interesting to, once again, get a student's perspective of, just different ways to look at some of our security personnel versus some of our SLOs, and also to make that suggestion of, adding I think another area of focus should be on the social and emotional, aspect. I know hearing from him and just hearing, how long it takes for him to be able to see somebody. I think some of those things are a concern, so hopefully we'll be able to address those, in the future. But once again, good job to the committee. Brian, I was made aware of TEA steps, and I know that, they're gonna be rigorous, especially before the beginning of school. But I want to thank Captain Rivas and her staff for helping, with some of the things like the door audits and things of that nature that were already ongoing. So it's comforting to know that, not that we anticipate it, but we're kind of on top of it, so to speak. So kudos to your staff for being able to help us out in that area. Mr. Mullen?
Yeah, I actually had one more question. I know we've put a lot of effort into security at the schools themselves, but have we done similar auditing of other locations where students might be present, like the Learner Support Center, the ag facilities, places like that, to make sure that we have equivalent access control and other safety measures?
Brian can answer that on the audits that take place regularly.
When we do our safety audits, the regular audits, not the ones that are the quick summer ones, we audit every single building in our district.
Okay, thanks.
And we will ultimately, any student location that houses students at any point during the year will be subject to this summer audit.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sanchez?
Mr. Miller, Mr. Pelosi, thank you all for leading this over the summer and focusing on security. And also thank you to the parents and staff that supported, because I know it was a busy time to be serving on a committee, but definitely something that's extremely important to the district. A question, I know it was discussed in one of the meetings around numbering windows. I think it's on page 7 of the plan that was provided, the recommendations. Is that something that is standard practice with local law enforcement as well as fire protection, or is that something that we'll need to coordinate with them just for their awareness and so they understand how we've gone about doing that?
We have and will further coordinate with them. We really, before we roll it out district-wide, we want to have pretty good consensus on it. Ultimately, we have buildings in every municipality, and so we generally will follow the requirements of that municipality unless it deviates too far and jeopardizes the program. Ultimately, those have been rolling out slowly, as we've heard through permitting, through facilities, that some of them are already been asking for it over the last couple of years. And so I think that's something we're going to really seriously look into and develop a plan on and get it executed.
Okay. Do we have a sense of timeline that we might be able to do that?
I would expect it to happen in the fall, where we start actually seeing numbering. We've really got to spend some time evaluating the different municipalities. And in terms of completing the work, we plan to use existing staff members to do that work and existing budgets.
Did you have something?
Yeah. Do we have to number doors? Don't we have to number doors?
Exterior doors.
Right.
Right, it really,
For EMS, right?
Right.
Purposes, so, yeah.
the code requirements are the address at the front door.
Gotcha.
To make sure it's clearly visible. What we're talking about is systematically numbering the doors around the building, so if there is an emergency, we can call and tell them it's exit or entrance number, and that would, based on the floor plan, that they would know where to go with that. The other thing that really came out of the committee was placing numbers on the exterior of classroom windows with the classroom numbers that can be referenced back to a floor plan so that first responders can really see from the exterior of the building where individual rooms are.
And then also I know it was mentioned about school counseling and additional resources. I know there was some good discussion in one of the meetings about the difficulty for some students to see a counselor maybe within a couple of weeks, and just wondered if some of the early discussions that have taken place, what that might look like as early as the fall.
Yeah, we'll spend some time this fall really assessing where the counselors are spending their time. Our primary importance is that when a student is in need, some type of crisis, they have counselors drop the academic meetings and assist the students immediately. When it comes to academic conversations, it might take a few days, it might take longer, but we do need to visit with our counselors and spend some time doing a time study, examining what's taking up their time and how they're allocating their time to support student needs at all campuses.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah. So thank y'all both for your time and dedication to this issue. Floor plans definitely is something that we need to have in the hands of anybody, securing the facilities, in the event anything happens. Raptor emergency management. How long have we had that? What exactly is it doing, and where can we take that in the future?
I'll let Brian touch
So
on that.
the Raptor emergency management is only one aspect of Raptor. We used Raptor years ago. The product really wasn't meeting our needs, and it was for a visitor volunteer management aspect of it. We used a different company. We've gone back to Raptor because they've significantly updated the quality of their work. One of the things that was appealing to it was they have a Raptor emergency app as well. So in addition to visitor management, volunteer management, the higher levels of security background checks, the ability to coordinate volunteers, that alone was greatly improved. But the emergency management app of it succinctly aligns with I Love You Guys, which is the standard response protocol that we use. So teachers will now be able to take attendance based upon class period, not on time, whether it's different times of the day. They don't have to worry about paper rosters. It also allows our staff and administrators to activate an emergency regarding with the app rather than having to be next to a phone if they weren't. It allows them to notify the staff in addition to us notifying them through the intercom system through the app. And it also allows us to very efficiently organize our reunification plan. So that is why it served a lot of different purposes for us to go back to it. And we implemented the visitor and volunteer management the last couple of years, and now we're implementing the emergency management.
So I guess following up that, two things I was curious. The doors have been mentioned. We have sensors, right, at the doors right now, right? Is this tied into an alert system so that somebody in the technology department could, in essence, get an alert, says this door's been propped open for 30 seconds, call that office of that school and have somebody go check?
Yes, so that's the build-out that's happening right now that will be completed prior to the start of schools. The summer school campuses are active without the notification piece of it, but all schools will have the alarm system active with notifications by the start of school. So it would be predetermined who gets an email as soon as that alarm goes off based on its programming.
In fact, one of the committee meetings met at Clear Creek High School and got to witness the audible sounds that would occur when a door is propped open, and then how that relayed back to Brian's team in emergency safe and secure schools, and the audible came on the announcements, both to activate it and back to activate the emergency and then deactivate the emergency.
Okay.
And on the backside, you can determine how many people and who you want to be notified.
Okay. And do we have like a safety hotline, like one number that if a parent's driving by campus and there's an open gate, or if there's, anything at all, say something, but a safety hotline so that everybody within the community district would know, call this number if you have a concern, whether it's student-related, gate-related, whatever, if you're a parent dropping off a student on a campus and see something. Do we have like one main hotline set up for that?
We have the maintenance on-call number, I believe, that we recommend people use, but we probably need to publish that a little stronger. Either come up with another number that's in those kinds of situations, but generally we have maintenance staff on call, and if there's an issue with any of our facilities, that's the number they call. So we do currently have it on the website.
Part of the fall campaign will be to train our community and parents on using the See Something, Say Something app. That is probably the most immediate way of informing district and campus administrators of something, of anything, whether it's a gate that's propped open or some altercation, or kids are telling us that somebody's cheating. But they let us know about everything, but that's part of the campaign that we need to do in the fall. It's probably even more effective than a phone number because so many people get that alert.
And that's the anonymous alerts system, correct?
And I just wanted to make the comment, when we brought Raptor back, I kind of reviewed some of the features, and I know when you had the slide up talking about the 7 things TEA, one of those were required drills. I think you're able to schedule those drills through Raptor, which I thought was pretty unique, especially for each campus.
So previously, without that requirement, Office of Safety and Security, we created our own form to have campuses schedule their drills. It's very time consuming and we put a lot of work into it. Raptor streamlined that, and we even streamlined it more, and we're gonna let the campuses know. We've already uploaded all of the dates and weeks and months that they have to have their drills, so they really have to go in and just look at that, the date, the week that it's, or the month, and pick on the date on a calendar, and that's it. We've already uploaded, broken it down, you have to have this one per this month, and here's your time frame, and we broke it down for semesters, first semester and second semester form, to try to relieve the burden of them having to do it the way we had designed it originally, and Raptor really helped us with that. So everything's already set up for them when they get back to school.
Mr. Bump?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to piggyback on what Jonathan mentioned. Having a hotline, or I guess having an app that you have to report incidents through is fine for parents who are used to using that, or for students or faculty. But I think for community members, or maybe people who don't often interact with the school, it might be easier to just have a phone number that you can call. Like, I don't know, 1-800-CCISD safety or something like that, 7 letters. But having some easy way that anyone can get in touch with a district safety person specifically to have an issue addressed. And I also think for the issue of gates, why not just put a sign on the gates saying when it's supposed to be open and when it's supposed to be closed, and if you see it any other time, then call this number and it'll be addressed. So I think that was kind of what he was trying to communicate, right?
Yeah, kind of like 911, 811, you know, you do have these emergency numbers and something on the website so that for the people that aren't the parents with the apps and everything that do see something like that. So, yeah, thank you.
Right. I was driving by the high school and I saw something weird going on, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So.
That's a good point.
That's a great suggestion. It's all a matter of just designating a phone number and communicating that. So
And tracking the calls and logging and then
that's
following up.
the tracking and
Yeah.
all. And so
Yeah.
ideally, the message would go through mechanism. We can discuss the processes that would follow that.
Fantastic. Are there any other questions? See no questions, I appreciate the presentation. And next, we will move to action items. Action item A, I'll call for a motion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Bowe,
I move that we approve the monthly Human Resources Board report as recommended by the superintendent.
thank you for that motion, Mr. Bowen. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. See no comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. And that motion carries unanimously. And next, we'll move to the consider approval of the 2022-2023 district compensation plan. I'll send it over to Dr. Williams.
So at the board meeting on June 27th, staff presented a preliminary budget update that included plans as it related to compensation changes. So at that meeting, it was an information item, and we're bringing the topic back this evening as for your consideration as a potential action item. And Alice Benzai, Chief Financial Officer, will provide an overview of the compensation proposal for next year.
So tonight we are going over our compensation plan that we're recommending, and I wanted to always like to bring the budget priorities back to the table. One of the board's budget priorities this year is to administer competitive salaries, stipends, and benefits for all employees. So I believe with this compensation package that we're recommending tonight, we will meet that goal and priority for the district. Our compensation plan, we discussed this back in June at our meeting, and we are presenting to you tonight a 2% salary increase to the teacher salary schedule for 22-23, with adjustments to that minimum teacher pay to bring that minimum up to $60,000 per year. We're recommending a 2% increase for all of our professional and administrative staff. And we are recommending a 3% increase for our non-exempt staff. So that would include our paraprofessionals and our auxiliary staff, custodial, child nutrition workers, and such. We also are asking you to approve the stipend schedule tonight, along with our substitute rate schedule. And we also are recommending some targeted market adjustments that I'll go into in a little bit. A little bit of a history on the past 6 years of what the district has done. You'll see that every year the district's been able to provide anywhere between a 1% and a 3% overall general increase for our employees. You can also see the significant step increases for those teachers that meet those milestone steps in their career, those 5-year, 10-year, 15, so on. They've received significant increases at those particular levels of service. I also wanted to provide you a little bit about our contributions, the district's contributions to our health insurance plan. Every year we've tried to do a little bit of something, with looks like exception of 1 year. This year we actually did see our employee rates reduced, so that will be a significant factor for our employees as well. Our teacher salary survey, I presented this back in June, but just as a reminder, we survey our salaries against our peer districts every year. These are some of the districts that we look at every year, and so for the last school year, you'll see the 0, 5, 10, 15, and 20 years of service where our teacher salaries here in Clear Creek have fallen against our peers. And you'll see the districts in green with the salaries in green are districts that are less than CCISD. The districts in red are districts that have higher salaries than CCISD. So you'll see that we're very competitive when you go further out on the scale, 10, 15, 20 years against our peers. Our beginning teacher salary pay, all the districts just seem to line up. We're all very close. So there's several that are a little bit higher than us, but it's not a significant amount. And same thing with 5 years of service. We're right there in the ballpark, whereas as we get further out, we are doing pretty good with our teacher salaries. So we've been watching very closely as our peers have had their Board of Trustees approving salaries and seeing what's happening out there. This year was a little unique because so many districts did jump out pretty quick and start making salary recommendations. I think I added just one district since the last board meeting, and that was Lamar Consolidated. They had their meeting recently. So this pretty much recaps all of the districts we always look at when we're looking at our peers, and you'll see that the starting teacher pay right now, the market median is $60,500. So with our recommended proposed salary for our beginning teachers of $60,000, we'll be about $500 off of that market median. That's exactly where we landed last year. So it's a good place to be. We're at 99.2% of the median. This is a busy schedule, and actually I wanted to show you what our actual teacher salary schedule looks like from last year to this year. So this reflects the years of experience from 0 to 35, and if you look at the blue lines, you'll see those are the benchmark years of service for our teachers where we have they would move into a new salary range. and they would see the higher percentage increases. So for example, at the 5 years of service, that would be a 7.36% salary increase for those teachers that hit that level. And then all the way down to 35 years of experience, once that teacher has finished their 35th year of service in a Texas school district, they would, the salary range this year would put them in it with a 6.02% increase. Our salary schedule actually goes up to 54 years of service, and I think for the past 2 or 3 years, I've said the same thing. This year we have 2 teachers that are at 54 years of experience. So there's not many teachers in between 35 and 54, but there are 2 at 54, and I checked last week, and they're returning again next year. So that range does go up to a higher amount, but for presentation purposes, I only included up to 35. So looking over at our compensation plan this year, beyond teacher salaries and the other general increases, we are asking you your approval of our stipend schedule this year. Stipends are paid to our employees for various things, including athletics and some academic type stipends, fine arts stipends. We have very minimal changes to our stipend schedule this year. There were some adjustments to the special education stipends, and that would include some of our hard-to-fill positions, such as diagnosticians, our LSSP psychologists, and our speech-language pathologists. So those are areas that we have struggled with, and so we believe that this will help with our recruitment and our retention with changes to those stipends. And we did not do it this year, but one of our goals for this coming year is to do an annual review of all of our academic and athletic stipends so that we can look at our peers and see how we're faring against those. So we will be performing that in the early spring of this coming year. We also are asking you to approve tonight our substitute pay schedule. One of the things that Dr. O'Pry has worked on is looking at the market for our substitutes and what we can do to improve that schedule. So these particular rates include a $10 per day rate increase for our certified teachers and our registered nurses, and a $5 a day increase for paraprofessionals, substitutes, and teachers that are not certified. So teachers, substitute teachers, maybe with a bachelor's degree or 30 plus college hours. So that is included in our compensation package tonight that we're asking you to approve. We also have worked very hard at looking at some of our areas where we have, again, hard to fill positions. We've had significant vacancies this year. And some of these positions include some of our auxiliary staffing. And so that custodians, our transportation bus monitors, and our child nutrition workers. I put child nutrition monitors, it's actually child nutrition workers. These are 3 areas that we have struggled with this year to recruit folks, and there's competition in the area. So what we're wanting to do for our custodians is to raise that minimum pay, our starting pay for our custodians, and that would hit $12 an hour. And then there would be adjustments throughout that scale for our current custodians. And then child nutrition workers, we would bring that starting pay up as well to I believe it's $12.50. And our transportation monitors, we're actually looking at bumping to a higher pay grade. So these, we are asking for, there's additional funds worked in here to give those particular areas the adjustments, and we're really hoping that this will help improve our recruitment of these staff. Just a reminder, I wanted to include it. At a previous board meeting, we approved the health insurance rates, but I just wanted to, since this does play a big part in an employee's compensation package, I just, as a reminder, wanted to put this out there for TRS Active Care. We did, the state did come through with new regional ratings for our premiums, and so Region 4 has their own separate premiums this year, and with that, we did see a reduction in, for our employees, in monthly premiums. So the district passed all of those savings on to our employees this year, or for this coming year. We do have about 3,200 employees enrolled in the medical plan of our 5,300 employees. And I wanted to, I think the question was asked at the last board meeting, what kind of savings would our employees get? So I broke it down for some average savings. You can see that the bigger savings that are out there are usually on the family coverage. We don't have as many employees that have family and spouse coverage here. We have, most of our employees have single coverage. So you'll see that about 1,800 employees will have a $264 annual savings in their premiums. And then 908 employees would have about a $516 annual savings. About 354 employees would have an $855 annual savings, and 52 employees would have a $1,644 annual savings. So those are probably 52 employees that have family coverage right there. And then there's 82 employees that are on TRS Active Care 2, which the rates did not change at all. So they would see a flat premium for next year. So looking at the overall cost of our compensation plan that we're proposing, I did want to outline how much each of these different areas would cost. Our general salary increase of 2% is about $6.4 million, and adding on an additional 1% for our non-exempt auxiliary paraprofessional staff is $405,000. The targeted market adjustments that we spoke about are about $745,000. And the substitute salary plan with the daily rate increases will be about $420,000. Stipend adjustments for special education, the positions that I mentioned, about $202,000, and athletic stipend adjustments and additions of $79,500. So that would be a total compensation adjustment package of $8,252,000. And this, as a reminder, we did work this into the budget that we presented back to you in June. We did present a budget that did include a transfer of 20% from capital and contingency, and it included all of these costs that we've outlined here. So that summarizes the compensation plan details, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Benzai, and I'll open it up for questions, for comment. Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Ms. Benzai. A couple of questions for you on, I think it's something that we had talked about during our last board meeting, but if you could just talk a little bit about what we think may be the reason some districts moved out and gave significantly higher increases, how they may have been going about doing that within budgets, and what steps we've taken to try to stay within our anticipated budget based on projected enrollment.
So the districts that I've looked at and researched, many of them have adopted deficit budgets. Several of them have. Some of them, many of them, are utilizing the federal ESSER dollars to help balance their budget, and CCISD is doing that as well. Some districts are doing that to a larger extent than we are. I would believe that Cy-Fair ISD is utilizing about $100 million in ESSER funds to cover their budget this year, so they have a balanced budget. What we've tried to do at Clear Creek is utilize those ESSER dollars over the course of this year and the next 2 years. So we have funds stretching out over that time period so that we have time to plan any budget modifications that we have to make over the next year. So I think a lot of districts have come out early with increases, and they're also utilizing their ESSER dollars for recruitment and retention stipends that are one-time things that, we're not recurring expenses every year on salaries.
And as Ms. Benzai has shared, some districts that are planning on doing larger compensation increases are receiving significantly larger amount of ESSER dollars because they have a significantly larger proportion of students from economically disadvantaged families, and that's the basis on which the federal government requires states to distribute ESSER funds.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Lawrence. Thanks, Alice. Another question for you. On the stipends, on the list of stipends, could you talk a little bit about the robotics stipends? I noticed on the high school level, it looks like it distinguishes between VEX and BEST compared to FIRST, and there's a difference in that stipend. At the intermediate level, it doesn't look like we distinguish. We just say intermediate robotics. And then at the elementary, there's a distinction between immersion campuses different than other campuses. And I just wondered if you could get some background on that.
I probably can gather some. I don't have it in front of me. I know that we did not make any changes to these dollar amounts this year for the stipends. At the elementary level, we did implement these stipends at the immersion campuses a little bit differently because I believe they were covering more students. Or it's arranged a little bit differently than a non-immersion campus, but I can certainly get you the details on how that's dispersed.
Okay. I think, and I know we'd had some discussion about this some months back about robotics, coding, and computational thinking and the increased number of interest in robotics, and knowing that some schools have more than one sponsor, more than one team, and just making sure that there is sufficient stipend available for all of them that are doing it. And then when I noticed the distinction, I just wondered if we had a little bit of rationale and if there's anything we could do to adjust that so that it's consistent throughout.
I can definitely get you back up information on the rationale for that.
Thank you.
And anyone else?
I'll go. I don't know if anyone. You good? Okay.
Drill.
Yeah, okay, so that everyone is clear and we all understand. So total compensation adjustments are about 8.2 million. Are we expecting our budget to increase by 8.2 million?
So our budget revenues that we presented last month are not expected to increase. We actually have tried to stabilize them utilizing what we believe are the enrollment numbers and the attendance numbers that we faced this year, which must have declined from prior years. So we were able to make significant reductions on the expenditure side of our budget, including utilizing the ESSER funds to work into the budget these increases so that we would only tap into capital and contingency by the 20% for the coming year.
Okay, so this is an accounting thing that on our end and responsibility that y'all are doing with adjustments, cutting funding in areas, but non-essential programs, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Well, so we're compensating $8.2 million if this passes. We're not increasing our budget, or we're not being funded an additional $8.2 million.
Right.
So in order to do that, we're making those adjustments, right, within our spending, our fiscal spending of the district, right?
Yes, and at the presentation last month, we went through the different areas of expenditures where we did have some staffing reductions that we were able to identify based on enrollment trends and what's happened with the loss of students. So that did help on the expenditure side to reduce our overall expenditures. Various other things ESSER funds, reallocating certain expenses over to ESSER, the ESSER grant. And so with those various things, we've been able to fit the $8.2 million expenditure in that.
And I would add that the biggest reduction you may recall is the 4-day adjustment in the calendar for a one-time savings of $6.8 million. And she referenced ESSER reclassifications, that's at a savings of about $1.9 million. The staffing reductions that are related to enrollment, maintaining class size ratios, but going back, recognizing that enrollment dropped over the last couple of years, so we're right-sizing staffing. And that's at a savings of $4.8 million. Overtime reductions of $450,000, and then some insurance and other reductions of $152,000. So that's why we're able to provide the increase in the salary.
And that's what I was kind of getting at, so thank you for clarifying that. And with regards to the ESSER, so yes, so Fort Bend ISD is using $27 million in ESSER. Let's see, Spring Branch is using $23 million, 20 to $25 million. They've got a 3% salary increase. Cy-Fair, like you said, it's $109 million deficit, so they're using $109 million in ESSER funds. And they're giving a 2% salary increase as well. What happens when ESSER funds are gone?
So that was the forecast for fiscal year '24 and fiscal year '25. Fiscal year '25 is a year, it's the cliff. So those expenditures, the expenses that we've been funding through ESSER, they're going to come back to the general fund. So that, this coming year is a legislative year. So we'll see what will happen at the state level for our funding. That's going to be a really important thing that we'll have to go through. We can't spend the whole next year waiting to see what the state does, because we won't know until May or June of next summer, and we have to start looking at our budget earlier than that, so we're prepared. So that's one of the things that we're doing this coming year is gathering a committee and looking at cost and different things that we can do as a district so that we're prepared for the next 2 years.
Planning ahead for the cliff.
And another way to add to that is if the district were to use a greater amount of ESSER dollars now, it means you would hit those deficits sooner. So in the forecast presented at the last meeting, FY24 was showing still being able to use $9.6 million of ESSER dollars, but if we use more of those sooner, then our deficit, which is projected at 6.8 that year, would grow even more. And the following year, it's at 25 million. So basically, using a greater proportion of those ESSER dollars earlier would lead to the challenges sooner.
Right. And I think that's important that everybody understand that. I mean, that's where we're at on this. Last year, we did a 3%, right? And I think total was about $9 million. So this compensation package, even though it's less on that percentage for teacher salary increase, it's actually, it seems like it's spread out more across the district, because last year was 3% for teachers. This year's 8.2 total compensation, but it's spread out more. And I know that it was mentioned about the substitute teachers and Dr. O'Pry being here. How did we do with filling substitute positions last year compared to other districts?
Our fill rate, I assume you're asking, our fill rate was within that.
Fill rate, yeah.
Is this thing on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, our fill rate dropped last school year especially during the times during the pandemic. But toward the end of the year, we were gaining. We're back to about 90% at the end of the school year. When you compare our fill rate to our neighbors, to the north and south, our fill rate was almost double that of many of our neighbors. Our applicant database is smaller than it's ever been, and we think that this market analysis that resulted in this proposed increase for substitutes will result in getting more applicants to apply for positions in CCISD as substitutes.
And I want to commend our human resources team, because even though we've compared favorably to other districts, the HR team recognizes that at the end of the day, what really matters, if the rate's lower than we want it to be, which it has been, we need to continue those efforts. So they have been incredibly persistent and not wanting to just say, hey, well, great, it's worse in other districts. Like, no, we've got a significant issue. This is a significant pain point for teachers in schools in terms of meeting the needs of students. And so that's the reason that even though we've got a relatively higher fill rate, that we think it's important to invest these additional dollars in the substitute salary plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our overall goal is to have 1,500 subs available to serve in CCISD classrooms. We hit 1,260 at the end of last school year. We didn't retain as many subs as we had hoped, but our goal is 1,500, and we think we're going to hit it this school year.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to point that out, that during a normal year, we're roughly about 800 subs.
That's correct.
So
That's right on.
we increased that to 1,260.
1,260.
And looking at 1,500. So although we were, not where we wanted to be, I think that's still commendable. And I'm glad to see that we were able to address sub pay to try to attract those subs. So.
Yeah.
And in fact, if I can just quickly mention to shout outs to the HR team. I happened to be speaking with Verna today in HR, and I asked her what she was working on today, and she talked about going back to substitutes from a year ago who had almost completed their substitute package but hadn't closed the deal, and so she was helping them close that deal, and that was just like the latest work this morning, reflecting that ongoing effort.
Yeah. Good.
Do we have the comparison on with the new proposed sub rate? Is that comparable to what our neighboring districts are paying sub-wise?
It is,
Does
and
that put us above, or we're still at average?
it puts us in the average. We won't be above. We will be above some school districts, but mainly we're right in there in the average, similar to the market connection or comparison that we have for teachers and other staff members in CCISD.
And I guess while we have you, Dr. O'Pry, and not to steal Ms. Benzai's thunder, but can you explain again why the pay rate, why we have that, structured where we compensate our tenured, teachers a little bit better than our neighboring districts?
Alice, did you want to talk about that, or
For substitutes or for?
For just teacher,
For teacher.
the scale itself.
You're talking
So-
about the 5, 10, 15?
Yeah, the 5, 10,
Yeah.
15.
And how we,
I think when we first started our new compensation plan for the teacher salary schedule several years ago, one of the areas we were really hoping to improve in was our experienced teachers, because we were falling behind at the time in that 10-plus years of experience. And so with the plan that was implemented, it really did improve those salaries with just the way the math works when you're implementing that type of structure. It does help with the outer years. So it's been a significant change for us as far as how we survey against other districts. When you look at just that screen that I put up there with all the greens that are in those areas. Every year, the beginning teacher salaries, all the districts seem to just move together, and we're close, but just because we're below the median with beginning teacher pay, we're in the ballpark, and it's not hurting our recruitment there.
And I hope there's a way we can add that slide maybe to our compensation page. One of the things I wanted to mention also that I think is, or I just want everybody to know, so a couple of years ago, there was a shortage of bus drivers. And then we noticed some of our neighboring districts had raised pay, for bus drivers. So kind of knowing in terms of custodial staff, for example, I know Mr. Hall's not here tonight, but I can remember at some previous presentations maybe a couple years ago that, you know, when we went through kind of budget tightening, you know, in 2008, 2012, you know, those were some of the positions that we did not fill, you know, as people retired or found other areas of employment. So I'm kind of cognizant that we never did catch up, and that our custodial staff, especially through COVID, and, you know, the past couple of years has done a phenomenal job. And a lot of times they're covering multiple schools. So I think that that's, you know, great that we're addressing that. And one other thing I wanted to mention, because I know this through the Education Foundation, our business partners out there that offer our staff, you know, discounts. I'd like to make sure, because it is on our website, but I just want to make sure that there's a blinking, flashing light, link, something like that, where they can hit that link and know, okay, when I go shop, how I can stretch my dollars or who is supporting, you know, the district. So I think that that would be, you know, great. I know a lot of times we get busy and we may not know that it's out there or it's available, but I wanted to mention that as well.
Thank you.
And any other comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for a motion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Bowen.
I move that we approve the 2022-2023 district compensation plan as recommended by the superintendent.
Thank you for that motion, Mr. Bowen. Do I have a second?
You have a second.
Mr. Larson, thank you for verbalizing. I saw you mischeck it. And thank you for that second.
Just one comment. Ms. Benza, if it's possible, I know we have some restrictions around adjustment to percentage increase for salaries beyond today's approved budget and contracts that would be in place. Do we have flexibility around stipends if after we review the differences across each of the grade levels, if there's any adjustments that need to be made for the school year, or will this also lock us into those for the academic year?
If there are changes to these stipend amounts, since we're approving this, the board is approving this tonight, I think I'd prefer to bring those separately for separate.
And if I can clarify, so like with contracts, there's one timeline for that, and are stipends incorporated into those contracts, and so the timeline is the same, or the board has greater flexibility in the case of stipends, and so we could bring back information?
I think there's greater flexibility with that. They're not, the stipends amounts are not in their contract.
Right.
But this is the board-approved stipend schedule with the rates on it. So I think if there's a recommendation to change those rates, or any of these rates beyond tonight, that would probably need to come back to the board
Yes,
for approval.
yes, I think Mr. Sanchez was understanding that. He was just wondering if there's that option, and staff will gather information in terms of the questions relating to robotics and the difference, provide the rationale for what's recommended, and then could entertain any potential adjustments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And so we had a motion on the floor by Mr. Bowen, and then we had a second by Mr. Larson. Any other comment? Seeing no further comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. And that motion carries unanimously. Thank you for that presentation, Ms. Benzai. And next, we'll move on to item C, consider scheduling a public hearing to discuss the did I read this right? The 2021, 2022, or should that read the 2022, 2023?
2022, 2023
Okay.
budget.
Budget and proposed tax rate, information and discussion. Maybe it just shows online, I don't know.
So tonight we are asking the board to schedule a public hearing to discuss the 22-23 budget and proposed tax rate. We have a very defined calendar that we have to go by every year when it comes to adopting budgets and setting tax rates. And so we are asking the board to schedule the public hearing for August 22nd at 6 p.m. At that time, we'll have the public hearing, discuss the budget, discuss the proposed tax rate. We'll actually adopt the budget that evening. The tax rate does not actually get adopted until September. So what we're proposing tonight is a published tax rate of 0.8797 cents per $100 of value and 29 cents per $100 of value on the interest and sinking rate. These are rates that, if these are the rates that are published, we can adopt a rate below, we cannot adopt a rate above. So that's the key. So we're not really asking you to set a tax rate tonight, we're just setting the public hearing with the proposed tax rate that will be published in the paper. As we gather more information, July 25th, our appraised values will come in from the appraisal districts. And then we will seek, there's a formula that we go through with PEA to determine our maintenance and operations tax rate. That will get approved very early August. And then this document will be published in early August as well, after we have all of that data and can actually come up with the rates. So that takes some time, but tonight we're just asking that you schedule that public hearing and with this proposed tax rate.
All right, pretty straightforward. Any comment, Mr. Bowen?
Sure, and just to clarify, the rate that is published in the agenda item is a maximum, but it is possible and maybe even mandatory that we would adopt a lower rate than what is published there.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. So,
And I'll just note as an FYI that the supporting documentation on the agenda item information form references the 22-23 budget and proposed tax rate.
Right.
And so in terms of public notice through that, we provided that as an agenda item.
any other comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for a motion. Mr. Sanchez?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation to schedule a public hearing to be held August 22nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. and the proposed tax rate to be published is 0.8797 for every $100 for maintenance and operations and 0.29 for every $100 for interest and sinking.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cottrell. Any comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? And that motion carries unanimously. And thank you for that clarification, Mr. Bowen, as well. Next, we'll move on to item 6, information and discussion of instructional grading and reporting procedures. I will turn it over to Mr. Moses.
All right, thank you so much. Wanted to go back and revise and talk a little more about the high school exam exemption regulation. Visited with that during the school board meeting last in June, as well as the policy 1st of July. The overall purpose of the CCISD semester exam exemption plan is designed to promote academic achievement, regular attendance, and responsible behavior. I thought it was important to state our overall purpose with this. The core semester average and attendance requirements are the same as we had stated earlier at the board meeting at the end of June, with a sliding scale with grades as well as attendance. The next slide addresses the AP course exam or the AP course semester average and attendance requirements, which again is the same as June. After discussion with our advanced academics director as well as teachers, the feedback was very mixed. And so we collectively decided to leave the AP exam requirement as part of the plan for this year, but to gather more feedback throughout the year. Also, in order to address the fall exemption with the AP exam that are just semester courses, in the fall that will need to add on the registered for AP exam. In other words, that government or eco class that is in the fall Obviously, they won't be taking that exam until the spring, so in order to address that piece in the fall, we've added that they have to be registered for the AP exam, which does take place in late September, early October. The discipline piece is still remaining the same as from June, with discipline procedures as part of the criteria for exemption for exams. Additional information that we added there, again, those were all presented to the board back in June at that board meeting, from credit recovery to how absences will be counted, the ability for the student to take the exam if they so choose. If a family or a student decides that it's imperative that they take the exam, they can take it without risk of causing their grade to decrease. And so we want to make sure that we provide that opportunity to those students as well. Appeals, of course, only appeal to the principal, and it only excuses a student from taking a semester exam. It does not excuse them from class attendance for that day, as again, ABA is part of the incentive, if you will. The course exemption list here shows a little bit of a change from the last time we spoke in June. Spring semesters classes all will be eligible for exemption. In the fall will be electives only, excluding AP electives. In discussion with our principals as well as our C&I department, we felt that the midpoint data that would be received, especially in the core classes and especially in STAR courses, would help campuses as well as teachers plan accordingly for the spring semester. So that is the one change there from what we brought you in June, is that the fall will be electives only. Elective courses are outside the area of English language arts, mathematics, science, social studies, and world language and cultures. Students, of course, benefit from this revised plan, better attendance, both in class attendance and learning, stronger student achievement, greater completion of out-of-class work, increased motivation, improved behaviors, and better ownership for our students. We talked about data in the past and wanted to kind of just take a few moments. This is a new slide that we're going to show you. With the new regulation, the 2017-18 fall semester, you can notice, I'll point out that the large circle is all courses that are available for exams at the semester. Again, remember, it's only electives, so that means that there's only 2 to 3 exams available for exemption per student. When we add the criteria, the circles, of course, begin to decrease. The first circle is grades only, the second circle is grades plus discipline, and then the final inner circle is the number of exam opportunities that would actually meet the criteria for the fall semester. So in general, 52% of all possible exam opportunities would meet the exam exemptions. That means that 48% of those exams would be taken. Probably a better data line there is 78,000, a little over 78,000 total opportunities for exams. That 20,000 only represents 26% of all courses. So it does show that our students are going to continue to take those all-important final exams, those semester exams, that prepare them for post-secondary success. Same applies for the 18-9 fall semester. I will not go through all the numbers there, but you can see a little bit of a spike there at 65% for the semester, but still only 24% of all courses exempt from a semester in the fall, again, due to the fact that it is electives only. Then finally, the 21-22, that would have been this past fall that we completed. Numbers are very similar. Again, 50% of the opportunities. When you count all courses, only 19% would be exempt. So again, our students will be taking those fall semester exams. Quickly, I'll show you the spring data. This is spring of 2017-18. And you can see the decrease there. This is with a 95.5% attendance rate. The 18-19 spring semester, 51%. And then finally, I think this is probably the most important slide. You can see the 21-22 spring semester with only 35%. You can tell where our attendance took a dip. Over 48,000 students didn't meet criteria eligibility when you add the attendance in. So again, a big focus is to try to make sure that our students are in class each and every day. The overall purpose, again, for this exemption plan is to promote academic achievement, regular attendance, as well as responsible behavior. And then there are some additional data at the back of the slide presentation. If you're into numbers and like to look at numbers, you can certainly look at that, and there's plenty of that opportunity available.
Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Moses. Mr. Bowen?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a huge improvement over the previous plan, and I think the policy committee and the trustees' feedback has definitely been incorporated into this very well. So I'm very happy with this, and I think the only thing that would give me a little bit of pause is an exemption in an AP class for the fall semester if it's only a semester AP class based on the sign-up. But I think if we find that that is incentivizing students who take that fall AP class to go ahead and sign up for the AP class or test in the spring, then it's probably worth doing that. So I really support this direction, and I think these changes are very good.
And Mr. Control.
Yeah, and I'll echo what Mr. Bowen said, because I know that we've looked at this in 2 policy meetings, and it leaps and bounds improvement. I do appreciate, I like the slide with all the circles and everything, because it does put in perspective what is really going to happen with all the exams, and that our children are still being challenged, and I think it's just a great improvement from where we started. So thank you for listening.
And I was just going to echo and actually recognize Mr. Bowen for bringing that up in policy meeting. I had a chance to, as a sub, kind of fill in and listen, and I'm glad that you took that feedback and kind of, went back and conferred with, principals and some of our other internal stakeholders to, come up with this plan. So I'm pleased with it as well. Mr. Century.
Mr. Moses, is it possible at the end of each of the 9 weeks that we could get an update just to see how, maybe what the impact is, and if we get a sense of number of absences, any changes from what we would have seen the prior year or prior couple of years, just to give us a sense if it is having the effect that we're hoping to see. And maybe we won't see it at the first 9 weeks, maybe we see it after the first semester, or maybe it's not until the spring, but just so we've got some data points to follow in the future.
Certainly, we'll get with Mr. Harden and his team. They do a fantastic job of pulling all that data and numbers and putting it into a format in which the rest of us can understand.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank the task force that they worked really hard on this from the very beginning, and been very flexible as we worked through the process, and certainly want to appreciate the time they put into the devising of the plan tonight.
And one other thing, I know we had talked about it when it was discussed the first time, but our plans to communicate this to students and parents, what that timeline looks like.
We want to make sure that we get this into our student handbooks. I think it's my understanding that it's past has not been in the student handbook to some extent or to the full extent. So we make sure that that's in there, as well as make sure that our campuses understand the promotion of this, and make sure that our students as well as our families are fully informed on this.
So, thank you.
All right. Any other comment? Thank you, Mr. Moses. And next, we'll move on to item B, student achievement data, our STAR in end of course, spring 2022. Dr. Bayard, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. It's been a while since we've had this opportunity to present information about STAR and EOC. Of course, the last couple of years, last year, STAR wasn't supposed to count for anything, but we saw it started to trickle in everywhere. And then the year before, when the state waived it during COVID. So I'd like to share with you just an overview of how our students performed and the different accountability measures. So first of all, there are different sites that are available for anyone who wants to access data. The first is on Data Sweep. That's password protected for district staff and board members, but you can find PEIMS information, STAR state assessment, SAT data, etc. But the last 3 links are all publicly available In fact, the data that I pulled for tonight that typically Ms. Sheridan Henley would have presented, she's on vacation. So it gives me an opportunity to live in my previous life, the assessment world. Those are all available. And so the data I pulled for tonight came from that txreports.emetric.net. You pull by district, overall state, and you get any grade level or assessment for STAR or EOC. The student achievement data that I'm presenting tonight is on grades 3 through 8 STAR for a 5-year trend from 17 to 22. Of course, there wasn't a 2020 measure in there. We'll look at an apples-to-apples comparison. Total, or all students in CCISD versus all students across the state, and all the subjects tested, math, reading, science, and social studies. But then also an apples-to-apples comparison by groups and their peers. So we'll look at economically disadvantaged students in Clear Creek ISD versus economically disadvantaged students across the state. Not economically disadvantaged versus not economically disadvantaged across the state. GT and special education. And we'll also do the same for STAR and of course exams, Algebra 1, Biology, English 1, 2, and US History. My plan and hope is that we can present to you student achievement data related to advanced placement exams and SAT, ACT in August, and then some other data related to Dreambox, FAST, or Amplify in September. So just a few assumptions and context for this is that our students experience engaging learning activities targeted to the TEKS, those are the text essential knowledge and skills each day. In Clear Creek ISD, we utilize our curriculum instructional resources daily, and we prepare students to have the skills to succeed. What we don't do is test brackets just to prepare students for STAR. There was a time back in the day with TOS and TAX that it was so test driven of, okay, you're going to take a benchmark every 6 weeks, practice test, practice test, practice test. And that was kind of just, it was all across the state, and we worked so hard to get away from that so that students can focus on the learning, learn the text essential knowledge and skills, and our curriculum. So students are supported with contextual preparation for any test. And so in AP classes, they prepare for the AP exam through sample. Like, they've got to see the context of the test choices, the formatting, question types, the online testing process. And that's what we do for these STAR-based courses. I also want to share alignments. Student learning is what this is all about. And so assessment is just one part of that learning process. But outside of assessment, there's so much more to the curriculum than what students are assessed on. And of course, instruction is a little bit bigger than that curriculum. Of course, we've got to provide those opportunities for teachable moments for students. Core values, for example. But then there's also an alignment of the content, context, and cognition. What students are learning, how they're supposed to learn it, and the cognition, the challenge level. What our teachers call Bloom's taxonomy or depth of knowledge. There are 3 levels of performance that students could have met. The first level is the approaches level. At that level, students have met the assessment requirements considered at the minimum passing standard. That is passing for the student for the student level at the state. The second level is meets grade level, and that means that students have met the higher standard of passing beyond those individual student requirements. The meets grade level standard is incorporated a bit more into the accountability in addition to approaches. These students have also met approaches. So they've met beyond approaches and they've gotten to meets. And then finally, there's the master's grade level. They've mastered an advanced level of performance. They have also achieved the approaches and meets grade level. When I present to you the data, what I'm not showing is not approaches because it's just 100% minus the approaches, and I'll show you that example. So that is the students who did not meet grade level. I want to share this table of just the raw score conversion tables for this past spring. I've been reading in social media and different sites about assumptions made that the state either lowered expectations or they hired expectations. I've seen both. In yellow there shows where there was a decrease in the number of items necessary to reach that level of approaches, meets, or masters. And there's one grade level, 5th grade reading, at the master's level that increased by 1 item, from 32 to 33 items needed to score correct. So there is a lot of data here, but I'll spend a little bit of time on this first slide to get the visual of what we're looking at. So in spring of 2022, when we look at 3rd grade math star at the approaches level, 79% of students reach that level of approaches. That does mean 21% did not meet grade level. The state was at 70% for all students. So what I've done is, or the way I look at this, I compare it to spring of 2021. Did we rebound from that dip last year? And this shows that we did rebound. In 3rd grade math at approaches, we haven't quite gotten back to the 81% that we were in 2019, but we've made higher growth than the state of getting back to where we were. Also looking at a 5-year trend, in 2017 we were at 85%, so we still have room to grow in 3rd grade math, but we've made some gains over the past year. When we look at economically disadvantaged, we see that we're at 66% over the state at 62%, and then much higher gains from last year, and again closer to where we were in 2019. And you'll notice the same for not economically disadvantaged students, gifted and talented, GT, and special education. The special education data is for students who took STAR, not the STAR alternate. So I just wanted to mention that. Notice our gifted and talented students, 100% met approaches, thankfully. The next level of performance is meets. And this is that higher level of passing. 50% of our students were at the meets level of performance in 3rd grade math. Over the state's 42%. You notice when we look at all the other groupings, when we compare economically disadvantaged to economically disadvantaged across the state, we're above the state and very close to where we were in 2019 of 35%. And very similar trends for not economically disadvantaged, GT, and special education. 3rd grade math at the master's level, above the state in all areas also. Again, the trends continue of almost of where we were in 2019 and still making ground to get back to where we were in 2017. The next grade level I'll share with you is 5th grade math, or 5th grade. In 5th grade math, you see the same patterns as what we saw in 3rd grade at the approaches level. Well above the state, 9 points over the state for all students, 5 points over the state at economically disadvantaged, and 4 points over the state at not economically disadvantaged. Also above the state in GT and special education. At the meets level, in 5th grade, we're at 57%. And so we're still where we were last year at the meets level in 5th grade, but when we look at economically disadvantaged and not economically disadvantaged, making ground. 8th grade math approaches, the same pattern and trend, above the state in all of the different groups in 2022, and making ground towards where we were in 2017. That's 8th grade math meets level. At the 8th grade math meets level, I do want to point out, because this is the only area that we have not met ground over the state. And so when we look at economically disadvantaged and not economically disadvantaged students, that not economically disadvantaged, we are at 44%, and the state is at 52%. I will point out that in 8th grade, though, we have many students that take Algebra 1. So when we show the end of course exam for Algebra 1, we'll see a much higher performance over the state, because the students that are higher performing are typically taking Algebra 1, or they're enrolled in geometry by this time.
So yeah, can I jump in with a quick clarification on that? So this 8th grade math meets, this does not include students who take algebra or geometry in 8th grade?
That is correct.
Okay, so they are completely excluded from this analysis?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
And we probably have more students in Clear Creek ISD on percentage taking Algebra 1 or geometry than the state average. I don't have that data, but that's my, I guess I have to make that assumption until I have the data to show. Master's level, same trend as at the approaches for 8th grade math. Similar to the state, but the state has more students at the master's level for this past year. 3rd grade reading, we'll get to the reading now. In 3rd grade reading, we have surpassed where we were in 2017. So over the 5-year trend, we've actually excelled higher to where we were in 2017 for all students. And then as you see all the other demographic groups, that trend continues upward even with the dip last year. The same is at the meets level and the master's level for all demographic groups. In grade 5 reading approaches, similar to 3rd grade trends, we have exceeded where we were in 2017 this past school year. So the trend is upwards for all student groups, including economically disadvantaged and special education. The meets level, we continue that trend of exceeding where we were in the spring of 2017 with just about all student groups. And the same with masters. 8th grade reading approaches, again similar to 3rd grade and 5th grade reading, excelling over the state and above the 5-year trend at all 3 approaches, meets, and masters. The next group is on social studies, 5th grade social studies. We took a little bit of a dip in spring of 22, 72%, well over the state of 66% for all students. And you'll see a slight dip across the different subgroups as well for economically disadvantaged and non-economically disadvantaged. And meets and masters are similar. We are over the state for meets and for masters for economically disadvantaged and all students, with the exception of the not economically disadvantaged groups. 8th grade social studies at the approaches level, we have rebounded back to where we were even in spring of 2017 and close to where we were in 2019 at the approaches level, but over the state in just about all areas. Same as for meets and for masters. Masters at the not economically disadvantaged though, we do have room to grow here. A big focus for this school year was on math and reading, and so, but we do have growth in 8th grade that we haven't seen yet. 5th grade science at the approaches level, we're at 72% versus 66%. I don't know why it's jumping back and forth. Again, making ground over where we were in 2021, not quite to where we were in 2017, but growing. And you'll see that throughout the different groups, with the exception of gifted and talented, where they're pretty much consistently at 99 or 100%. Meets grade level, above the state everywhere, and at the masters above the state everywhere also. 8th grade science, over the state and with all of our subgroups for economically disadvantaged, non-economically disadvantaged, gifted and talented, and special education. And at the meets level, again, rebounded back to, back to where we were, close to 2017 levels for performance. And the last 5 are the end of course exams. Algebra 1, we are well above the state at 83% versus 74%. Again, we have 7th grade students and 8th grade students in Algebra 1. When we look at first-time testers alone, 87% over 80% for the state. And then you'll see similar difference across all of our demographic groups. Even our retesters, we had 29% over 28% at the state level. I've shared meets and masters, and at the meets you'll see similar trends. Getting closer to where we were in 2017. We're not quite there yet, but certainly rebounded from last year. And the same at the master's level. When we look at biology at the approaches, meets, and master's level, well above the state in just about all demographic groups. And the same is for meets and masters. And you see where those blue bars from Clear Creek ISD, well over the state, 80% over 62%. And a much even bigger difference at the master's grade level, master's performance. English 1 approaches, English 1 also over the state with all groups, 75% over 63% for all students. Similar trends at the meets and master's level exceeding the state performance. And you'll see the same for English 2. English 2 at the approaches, meets, and master's level, well over the state. And finally, U.S. History is the last end of course exam, also well over the state, 94% over 89%. And you'll see in all demographic groups presented here over the state as well. Same as for the meets and master's levels of performance. So what do we do with this data? What does this all mean? I was actually surprised to see the data because of the attendance challenges we had this past year. Starting off with COVID, we had a lot of substitutes in and out, and yet outstanding praise for our curriculum coordinators and our classroom teachers and our students for performing as well as they did. Next steps that our curriculum coordinators do is they revise the curriculum. And so you've seen the Friday reports that they've been revising curriculum this summer. Those revisions are based on formative and summative data, as well as teacher feedback from throughout the year. And also their knowledge of the STAR redesign. STAR is going to look a lot different this coming spring. And so what they do is they'll take the item analysis. So for example, I'll speak from the math side. They'll look at how students answer each question. Was it a procedural error? Was it contextual? Was it a vocabulary issue? And they'll provide just-in-time professional learning for teachers to be able to supplement instruction for those particular units where the item analysis dictates that support. But our coordinators will be working with instructional coaches and with teachers on the STAR interims. Those are tests that 2 to 3 tests throughout the year, as well as the STAR redesign that incorporate a lot more reading and integrated curriculum into each of the assessments. I did provide a sample unit block or curriculum study there. And what our curriculum coordinators have been doing is revising this curriculum that shows learning targets, student outcomes, assessment samples, evidence for learning, instructional strategies, etc. But it's a huge resource and support for teachers as they approach instruction during the year. And as they progress throughout the year, they do update these documents. So for example, the assessment examples, if there's something in particular from STAR where there was a problem, they have an opportunity to update the assessment examples to provide teachers that feedback. So I know it's a long and lengthy presentation, but we haven't looked at STAR or end of course exam data in a long time. We don't focus 100% of the learning on STAR. It is, or end of course exam, it is just one assessment, but it is a measure that is used throughout the state. This time I'll be more than happy to answer any questions or receive your feedback.
And thank you for running through the numbers with us, Dr. Bayard. I'll open it up for questions. Mr. Bowe?
I know this is probably, this is a lot of analysis already. At some point, are we going to get an update on how this data how far along we've come in meeting our HB3 goals? campus by campus?
Yes, I'll ask Ms. Henley and our wonderful analyst who's here, Mr. DeHart, to update the House Bill 3 goals.
Thanks.
Yes.
Anyone else? I was going to ask for the campus data as well, because I was just curious if we saw maybe some campuses that may have seen more significant change from prior years, but just to give us a sense of what, outside of HB3, but even just ultimately how they performed, and if there were any things that we noted from a content area or subject matter that we think was a hang-up for our students.
Sure. That'll be the next thing we look at, take a closer look. Accountability data should come out in August. And this data just became public a little over a week ago, actually, for the STAR 3 through 8. So we'll take a look at the campus by campus analysis.
Any other comment, questions? Dr. Bayard, I'll just make the point that I'm kind of curious to see, and we started it kind of this year, I think uniformly across the district, but what our PLCs will do, not that we're trying to address, I think we basically did it in terms of professional development and also for professional development, and I think for fidelity across the district, just making sure that what's happening in one school is happening in another school. But I'd be curious to see a year or two down the road what impact that will have on this. And although I'm pleased to see that we're outperforming the state, I think in some areas it still highlights that we're trying to catch up with pre-COVID, right? And some of those 2017, 2018 numbers. So very appreciative for you putting together and also putting the data together where we could compare before, during, and after, so to speak. So thank you. And any other comment? Well, thank you, Dr. Bayard. It is 6:17. The board will now move to closed session as authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Section 551.001, concerning purposes permitted by the act, including 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, deliberation regarding real property, 551.074, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignments, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an employee. And I call us back into open session at 6:58 PM. Do I have a motion on item A?
Mr. President.
Mr. Sanchez.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the Superintendent Eric Williams voluntary retirement agreement with Clear Creek ISD.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Do I have a second? Ms. Checa? Are there any comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. And that passed unanimously. I'll pass it over to Dr. Williams.
Thank you. I'd like to share some context for the agreement that the board just approved. I'm resigning effective January 31st, 2023. I plan to take a short-term leave of absence and then will assist the district with the transition to a new superintendent. My short-term leave of absence will start on July 12th, 2022. I plan to return to Virginia to support a family member with a medical condition. Clear Creek ISD is an exemplary school district. I am deeply grateful to the CCISD staff for all that they do day in and day out. We have outstanding team members who give 110% in all that they do. And I'm grateful to CCISD parents for the support they provide and to our students for their resilience and excellence. I wish CCISD all the best in its work to sustain and build on the excellence of our district. And I want to thank previous and current trustees. I appreciate having had the opportunity to work in and lead a district that effectively empowers students to achieve, contribute, and lead with integrity. This is gratifying work. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Williams. On behalf of the entire district, the Clear Creek Independent School District Board of Trustees, we express, appreciation to Dr. Williams for his leadership while serving as our superintendent. Dr. Williams built on our previous efforts with personalized learning. He collaborated with others to establish robotics, coding, and computational thinking, immersion programs at 3 of our elementary schools. He engaged staff members in taking steps now, as you heard earlier in our current budget, to address financial challenges relating to declining state revenue. The board will develop a timeline for our superintendent search process soon. We will take the time needed to do a thorough search for our next superintendent, and we thank Dr. Williams for his service. Thank you. And next, I'll move on to item B.
Mr. President,
Mr. Bowen.
I move that we appoint Dr. Karen Engel as interim superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Do I have a second?
Second?
Since Mr. Larson verbalized, thank you for that second, Mr. Larson. Are there any comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. And that motion carries unanimously. And with that, we will adjourn our meeting at 7:02 PM.